Hi, Gene here with my thoughts for today. My thoughts for today will be about two news items, basically sharing two important news items that happened just today, which is Friday. You're seeing this on Monday, so neither of these breaking news items will be breaking news by the time you're seeing them. One of them you may not even have heard about them because, as I said, I did an earlier vlog where I talked about Trump's very successful trip to the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Syria, and very successful. And I speculated at that time, actually, how would the media that reports 92% negative of Donald Trump report this, where everything was positive? And I got my answer. They didn't report it at all. That's what I understand. I didn't watch every channel, but I read that, I saw he gave this incredible, really amazing speech in Saudi Arabia. Fox Business News, which I had on at the time, showed the entire speech. Whether Fox News, the news channel, did or not, I don't know. I read the ABC, CBS, NBC, the mainstream, the liberal media. They didn't show, that's the answer. How would they portray something that was, how would a media that reports 92% negative about Donald Trump report something that's 100% positive? And the answer is they didn't report it at all. They just didn't cover it. So you may not know that he said in Saudi Arabia, this is the first item, Saudi Arabia, that he said that he hoped that Syria would join the Abraham Accords. Now, to me, that was, that Saudi Arabia would join the Abraham Accords, and then later when he went to Syria, he said the same thing, that he hoped that Syria would join the Abraham Accords. But to me, these were both Martin Luther King, I have a dream type speeches that, he said to the Saudis in his speech there that they would join he hoped they would join in, they would join in their own good time, which was the phrase that he used. So it wasn't something I expected right away, and neither did I. So I was pleasantly surprised to read this. Now, this is not Saudi Arabia, this is Syria, where, let's go right to the headline. Report, Israel holding talks with Syria on Sharia regime joining Abraham Accords. Sharia is the current leader of Syria. Israel has been holding secret talks with Syrian officials in recent days, including on the possibility of the new regime joining the Abraham Accords, according to a report Thursday, a day after U.S. President Trump invited new Syrian President Ahmad al-Sharia to join the Accords and normalize ties with Israel. So that is, as I said, to me it was like a Martin Luther King, I have a dream type thing, a general hope for something to happen, and then here you have this report. We'll see how it pans out. Whenever you see a headline, in case you haven't figured this out, if something's going to happen, it'll say it's going to happen. When they say report, blah 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 is happening, that means they don't know, that somebody else, that the person writing, the journalist or reporter or whatever writing that article is not speaking from personal knowledge of something that he interviewed people and he knows to be true, that they fulfilled the standard journalistic rule, which is to have at least two sources for every thing that you report as fact. It just says it's a report. So that's what he's reporting as a report, not that this is actually happening, but just that you have that report there. It's very hopeful. It would be very, very, it would not be quite, it wouldn't rise quite to the level of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords, which would change everything. But Syria joining, that would still be very, very, very important and very, very portentous for peace in the region, which really means peace with Israel. And it's the smartest thing that he could do if he does that, because you will have, he just got to look over his shoulder and see what's going on with the Emirates and Bahrain, who signed the Abraham Accords, and trade between the two countries is booming. Much more. I don't have the exact number on the top of my head, but they were hoping for a certain amount of trade, like $1 billion or whatever, over time in trade. They've already exceeded that. Whatever their goal was, for long-term goal was, they've already exceeded it. But you would have, never mind just trade between Israel and Syria, you would have enormous investment coming into Syria. So if this guy Shari'a really cares about his country, and he may, the criticism is that he was leading, he had a $10 million bounty from the United States on his head. He was designated as a terrorist. He was, but number one, he's not wearing the military uniform. He's wearing a Western suit. But he seems to be changing, and some people are saying, well, of course, it's always going to be trust, but verify. They're not 100% sure of him, or they're saying, well, he's a former terrorist. How can you deal with him? And what they're forgetting, that there were other people. I'm thinking specifically of Menachem Begin. He is the he's deceased. Now he died some years ago, but he was the Israeli prime minister who made peace with Egypt, who met at Camp David with Anwar Sadat, also unfortunately in his case also deceased because he was assassinated, precisely because he made peace with Israel. But anyways, Menachem Begin was the Israeli prime minister who met with Sadat at Camp David with Carter there, Jimmy Carter there, though actually Carter was really just a host. There already had been that's the way these things usually go. They don't want an unsuccessful meeting. So Israel and Egypt had been behind the scenes under the table negotiating directly, and it was really just the United States putting our imprimatur on what they had already at least advanced, significantly towards consummating. So the point is, the reason I bring up Menachem Begin and compare him with Shari'a is that Menachem Begin was a former terrorist. He was a member. You have to remember, when Israel before it regained its independence, and the last people to occupy were the British, the Palestinian Mandate, the British Mandate, and there were two military groups. There was the Palmach, which was just defensive because the Arabs were attacking kibbutzim and rioting and killing Jews, so they were self-defense. They are what later became after independence, became the Israeli army. And but there was another organization, the Irgun, who were trying, that's Hebrew for organization. The Irgun were trying to push get the British, compel them to leave, and they were a terrorist group. They were not just offensive. They went, one of the things they did was they bombed the famous bombing. If hopefully they still teach some accurate Middle Eastern history in the universities, but the King David Hotel bombing, which, by the way, if you're talking about the difference between, say, Hamas, these Arab terrorists, and the Irgun, they warned about before there would be time to find the bomb and defuse it, but an hour before or sometime before, they called the hotel and they alerted them. And number two, they didn't bomb civilians, just the hotel. There was one particular wing of the hotel that was being used. It was a headquarters for the British occupying force. So that was the only part that was bombed. They put a bomb directly underneath that wing, and they warned everybody so the people could get out. So it was really just physical damages. To my knowledge, nobody was killed. And then there was so that they were terrorists. So there was another one where they, I think it was the Irgun. I'm not 100%. I'm 99% sure it was the Irgun. The Brits had captured I don't know what you call him. I guess you could call him. I don't know if he was a terrorist, but a partisan and opposite, a Jew who was. He did something. I forgot exactly what he did, but he was sentenced to death, and the British, tried him for violence against the British occupying force, and they tried him. They were going to hang him. So what the Irgun did, if that's, I assume it was him, but somebody, they kidnapped a British soldier, just picked a soldier and kidnapped him and said, well, if you hang our guy, we're going to hang this guy. And the British hanged that guy, and I believe it was the Irgun. They hanged the British soldier that they could, just poor innocent British soldier that they had captured. So that the point is that Menachem Begin was part of the Irgun, but after Israel became independent, he got, well, as soon as the British were leaving, and then the Irgun, they stopped the terrorism and they banded together. They said, now that you're ready to fight, because the Palnak would not fight the British, they were purely defensive, and they said, okay, well, now that you're ready to fight, we will join you. And ultimately, Menachem Begin became a statesman. Once independent, he joined the government. He was in the legislature, the Knesset. He ran for prime. His party won, his parliamentary system, and he became. Actually, that was Menachem Begin. Little trivia here. He marked the turning point. It was like electing Ronald Reagan. Israel, they were 99% socialist at the point where they gained independence in 1948, or 1947, and he was on the right, and he was the fulcrum. That was a turning point when Israel became more and more conservative. And then leading ultimately to Netanyahu and the decline of the left. They were far and away the dominating faction in Israeli politics, and now they barely qualified. The Labor Party, the Liberal Party, they barely qualified to join the government in the last election. I think they have only 4 seats out of 120. So that was. It's monumental if that happens. I mean, number one, it further isolates Hamas and Hezbollah, all these people, and Iran. That's number one. And number two, it puts more, if Syria can join the Abraham Accords without demanding a pathway to a Palestinian state, which will probably never happen anyhow. It puts more pressure on the Saudis. Do they really want to be the last ones? Everybody makes peace with Israel, except for, and experiences the benefits, the wealth, the trade between, and just people meeting each other. And well, you would have hopefully Saudis studying in Israeli universities, especially the Technion. That's their equivalent of MIT. Studying there, but it could be a day when they are not just studying there, but teaching there. So very big. And when Syria sees how Saudi Arabia sees how these other countries, if they see a great transformation in Syria, then that would be, it would be amazing. It would just be amazing. And furthermore, you would have, imagine a landline across, going through Saudi Arabia and through Syria, through all these, Lebanon, through these other countries, but definitely through Saudi Arabia, all the way to the Mediterranean. A land route, a rail route for trade, for transporting goods. Imagine a natural gas pipeline. Israel has natural gas, Saudi has oil. Can you imagine those two products going both ways through a pipeline that links Israel to Saudi Arabia? I mean, the advantages are so great, and just peace. And just there actually was an article I read not too long ago, a Saudi citizen very interested in Israel. He Hebrew. He studied, online where he learned Hebrew, and he's been to Israel a couple of times. And he said he was very surprised. People would, because there are Arabs all over the place. This idea that they're apartheid, that's nonsense. They live in Tel Aviv. They live everywhere. So he would go anywhere he wants, so he would encounter, Jewish Israelis especially, and they would say, "Where are you from?" And he would say, "Saudi Arabia." And at first they would be very surprised, but then very, very friendly. And then he noticed that's the important thing. See how friendly they are? Because as I've mentioned in the past, I'm a retired, semi-retired, soon to be fully retired real estate broker living in Tennessee, but I was a broker in New York City. I still have my license, and I had a lot of Arab customers, and we get along fine, very, very friendly. One of my best friends at the time when I lived there was an Arab from Yemen, and all of his. I had Arab customers, and we get along really fine. I once showed a space that was owned by one of these very Orthodox Jews, the ones that have the black coats and the long sideburns. Pious, they're called, long pious, and the hat, and my Arab customer, and everybody got along really fine. They all got along really fine. So that would happen almost overnight in the Middle East if Saudi Arabia joined the Abraham Accords, and even before now, you're seeing between Bahrain, the signatories right now to the Abraham Accords, and Sudan too. I keep leaving out. The main ones are the Emirates and Bahrain. So anyways, that's that. Now, there was another news item. I said there were two, so it took me a while to get to the second one. This one I'm pretty sure that you would have read about, because it could be and seen, because it could be, if for no other reason, then it can be spun as negative, as part of the 92% negative coverage of Trump whenever that he's in trouble. That's something, a little aside here, because this bothers me too, because news media, they're supposed to report news. What is news? News is something that happens, but they'll report, well, blah 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 bill is in trouble, or there's debate. In other words, they're saying they're an article about something that's in trouble, but a real news person to me, and I had journalism 101, believe it or not, these many years ago in college, and well, why not wait to see what actually happens and then report that? So it won't be surprising to me if they do report that the House right now, all these committees are meeting to put together the big beautiful bill, which and there was they had a vote in the budget committee. That's the news, really. I mean, there was another committee that I forget which one that passed something, but to send it to the floor. But the budget committee, it failed. The part of the bill that they were responsible for, 5 Republicans voted against it for various reasons, and one of them, I mean, you had the very conservatives one saying, well, it didn't cut spending enough. Then you had the more liberal ones, well, we'll say moderate, because they're not anything close to what you would call liberal, among Democrats. So they won. So you had one wing. A couple of these senators objected because the spending was not cut enough, and the last one, or the other ones, were, well, there was one in particular that said one of the things they're doing, one of the budget cutting things is to just follow the law, limit Medicare coverage to those who are legally entitled to get it, which excludes, I mean, it means pregnant women and disabled people. It does not mean able-bodied men who are capable of work. And so all they wanted to do, well, number one, is cut that spending, and at least this one of the Republican senators who voted no objected to that, and also objected to, well, that was the main thing. There was another objection, and I just on my tip of my tongue, and they wanted people, well, they didn't want the spending cut that was basically it. They wanted it to continue to go to people who were not entitled to it. And yeah, they didn't want any reform of Medicaid. But that was basically it. And then you had the other side that wanted they wanted to remove the work requirement. That was the thing. They wanted people who are not entitled to get, able-bodied men, not entitled to get Medicaid to continue, I hope I didn't say Medicare before, Medicaid, to continue to get it and not be required to work. And there was another, the bill, as I understand it, also, even though required recipients, if they are able to work, that part of the bill would not kick in for 4 years. So all these objections. So there was one, Tom McClintock is a representative from California, and he had something to say to these recalcitrant, my way or the highway Republicans, and here's what he had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the disappointment expressed by some of our Republican colleagues that there's so much more reform that could have been and should have been made in this reconciliation bill. But as Benjamin Franklin reminded the Constitutional Convention, when you assemble a group of people to benefit from their collective wisdom, you will also get their collective folly. He asked them, from such an assembly, can perfection be expected? He noted that the principal difference between the Catholic and Anglican Church was that the Catholic Church was infallible and the Anglican Church was never wrong. But he reminded them, as sure as we may be of our own perfection and infallibility, we must all doubt a little of that infallibility if we will ever be able to come together for the common good. And the common good is clearly served by this bill, with all of its imperfections and disappointments. The only economic indicator that matters is how people answer this question next year. Are you better off today than you were 2 years ago? This bill provides much of the tax and regulatory relief that is needed to revive the American economy. But it has to be put in place now if it is to have time to work. By this time next year, Americans could be enjoying one of the most explosive periods of growth in our history. Only those who remember what it was like to wake up in Reagan's morning in America can know how exciting and joyful that feels. Are we to sacrifice all of that in the quixotic quest for perfection? This is not the end of the fiscal reforms necessary to restore our nation's solvency, but rather the first step. The day after this bill becomes law, we will begin work on the 2026 Budget Act and the next reconciliation bill that will offer the next step toward enacting additional spending reforms. But if we falter in taking this first step, we can't get to the next one. We'll waste the summer squabbling and fuming to the delight of the Democrats and to the despair of the American people. If we succeed, we can then build on that success in the months ahead, adding additional spending reforms, a task that will be made easier by a prosperous and expanding economy and an electorate that can taste the success in their own lives and fortunes. As Lincoln said, it's not can any of us imagine better, but can we all do better? He said, we can't escape history, for we will either nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of mankind. He said, we must disenthrall ourselves, and then we will save our country. Let's do that today. I yield back.
That's it. That's my thoughts for today. Thanks for stopping by. If you could subscribe, that would really be great. Your comments always welcome in the comment section below the video. If you could share this video with anyone who would benefit from it, that would really be, well, actually everybody would benefit from it, but people you know that you would benefit from it, support, send it to them. But most of all, come back and see me again. I'd love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.